Okay, so good day once again. So your topic for today is planning for a written test. If I may say, this topic is a bit technical. This topic would entail some of our mathematical skills, but this topic is very important for us to be able to prepare for a good examination. And to tell you honestly, this is also something that we educators are still currently working on. But I hope by the time that you will become full-blown educators yourselves, you are also teachers by your own rights, you will be able to practice this one and that you will be able to do it wherever you will be working later on or whatever field, whatever institution you will be working on in the future. Okay, so today we will be talking about planning a written test. And in this lesson, our goal is to set appropriate instructional objective for a written test and then prepare a table of specifications for a written test. So here, we will see types of what you refer to as your TOS. Oftentimes, you will hear your teacher say, you refer to the TOS, or let's say, we will construct the TOS. So this is your discussion on your table of specifications. Now, perhaps the first thing that we need to remember for this lesson is that why are we having task objectives and learning outcomes? Okay? Di ba? Palagi lang, always lang sinasabi, since the start of the class, I am always repeating that whatever you do in your class, you always go back to your learning outcomes. Whatever exams you will be giving, you always go back to your learning outcomes. And now, since we are talking about test construction or written examinations, you are still reminded that the first step in a well-planned written test is still your alignment with your learning outcomes. Okay? So if you can notice, no, if you can notice the preliminary examinations that we had, in your prelim examinations, the items there that are being discussed, the items there that are being asked from you is actually congruent to our learning outcomes that you will be able to prepare an effective assessment as an educator later on. That's why you will see items that will ask you of some situations on how to deal with your students, and you will also see items if this assessment was constructed properly or not. Because at the end of the day, or even at the start of your instruction, the first thing that we look into is learning outcomes. Okay? The first thing that we need to look into is learning outcomes. So may that be what examination, whatever examination, you will be talking about learning outcomes pa rin yung bottom line na babalikan kung bakit tayo nag-conduct ng examination. Okay? Now, be mindful because later on, for example, once you are already teachers, no, you will be asked, no, you will be asked by your principals, you will be asked by your deans, magtatanong, uy, bakit ka nagbigay ng ganitong item? Okay? John Paul, this item seems to be very difficult. Why do you have this item? You as a teacher should be able to rationalize based on your learning outcomes, why did you have that item? Okay? Now, others would also ask, bakit napakadali ng exam mo? Bakit ganito yung exam mo for your grade 3 students? What's your purpose for this? Dapat you should be able again to go back to your learning outcomes. Okay? You should be able to go back to your learning outcomes. Now, what are the objectives for testing? So class, pag sinabi nating objective for testing, balik pa rin tayo kay triangle na yan, no? That's why this triangle, the Bloom's taxonomy, will still be part of your succeeding examinations because a lot of what we are doing in education is related to this. Okay? Now, what you can see on the left side of the screen, I borrowed this picture from the internet. So you will see the original work of Bloom, which was way back in 1956. That's nice to know. And then class, later on, it was revised by his students also, which was who were Anderson and Krathwohl. Okay, Krathwohl. So the 2001 version is that of Anderson and Krathwohl. Oftentimes, they would refer to this as your revised Bloom's taxonomy. So, if you can notice, class, from knowledge, comprehension, apply, analyze, synthesize, evaluate, noun yan dati eh. Diba? Knowledge is a noun, comprehension is a noun. But in your Anderson Krathwohl 2001, there was a transition to the verb. So that's why it would say, remember, understand, you will be able to apply, analyze, and then you have evaluate here and then create. As you can notice, there's an interchanging of the level of synthesis and evaluation. So, pag titingnan natin, yung frequently nating ina-apply when it comes to your course outcomes is already that of Anderson and Kraftwall, oftentimes also referred to as your revised Bloom's taxonomy. So, ibig sabihin, for example, I will make a test. Okay? I need to know what is my outcome for this. Okay, bakit ako nag-draw ng microscope during the examination tapos pinalabel ko yung estudyante? Because one of my learning outcomes is that my students will be able to identify the parts of the microscope. Okay? So identify, if you would look at the word identify, it's already a verb. So kaya sabi ni Anderson and Kraftwall, dapat i-verb natin to kasi verb is more easier to measure, verb is more understandable, and verb pertains to action, which means that it will be more appropriate when we want to measure the learning of the learners that we have. Okay? So basically, the objective of testing would go back to that. Now, let's talk about the table of specs, TOS, table of specifications. Pag sinabi nating table of specifications, it refers to your test blueprint. One of the keyword there that you would have is your blueprint. Okay? Now, sa mga mahilig dito sa bahay nila or kapag nakita nyo yung blueprint ng bahay nyo, you would notice that your blueprint is the plan of your house. Diba? Yan yung plan ng house nyo. Once you have the blueprint, you will be able to make a home. You will be able to make a house. So without a blueprint, your house would fail. Okay? Or your house would not even be built. Now, if you would look at class the table of specs or TOS, that's also the same purpose. Okay? Now, look at it, test blueprint. Tinatawag siya class na test blueprint. At ano pong purpose ng test blueprint na yan? It is to design a test. Okay? It would map out the following: objectives, contents topic, level of cognitive behavior, distribution of items, number, placement, weight of test items, tsaka test format. Do not memorize that. Try to look at the examples that I have given to you through your study guide. Kapag titingnan nyo yung tatlong examples na nakalagay class sa study guide natin, makikita ninyo guys that there are three. No? There are three examples there. So your TOS, your three-way TOS, your two-way TOS, and your one-way TOS. If you would look at the labels there of the columns, makikita nyo, nandyan yan lahat. Test objective, content topic, okay, the level of cognitive behavior, the distribution, the number, placement, the weight of test item, and then the test format. And what is the goal of your TOS? Your TOS is actually the implementation of what I have been repeating to you, that there should be an alignment of course outcomes, assessment, and instruction. Dapat may alignment ng outcomes, ng assessment, at saka ng instruction. So for example, in my case here, as you can notice, doon sa prelim exams natin, may mga example related to science, may example related to math, may example related to other subjects. But am I testing you on science? Am I testing you on math? Kung nakikita nyo, hindi. Di ba? Even if I will give an example that the student is taking an examination in math, it is not your knowledge in math that is being tested. What I'm actually testing there is your knowledge about assessment in learning. Because after all, those are the outcomes that I would want you to hear. I would want you to know, I mean. Okay? Now, for example, if I am teaching a anong tawag natin dito? Let's say, for example, I'm teaching the parts of the microscope. If I am teaching the parts of the microscope, guys, no? Kapag we are teaching the parts of the microscope, tapos naglagay ako doon ng isang cell, hindi ko pwedeng i-grade yung student based on the identification of the cell. Because what I'm teaching them is the part of the microscope, and I just had that cell there as an example for them to see what a microscope can do to a certain cell. So halimbawa, lesson 1 pa lang, parts of the microscope. Hindi ko siya pwedeng sabihan, okay, ikaw, Charlotte, identify mo kung nasaan yung cell wall. Ikaw, Chelsea, identify mo kung saan yung nucleus. Hindi pwede because your goal for that day, your goal for this exam is to identify the parts only of the microscope. Okay? So wag kayong feeling traidor. Tapos wag kayong feeling na, sige lang, advanced concepts yan. If you will be doing that to your student, the tendency is that your student, your pupils will be disappointed of their performance. Tapos sasabihin nila, hala, nag-aral ako pero bakit ang bobo ko? Nag-aral ako pero bakit parang hindi ko alam yung lumalabas sa examinations? Okay? That's one purpose why we have your table of specification. And the big word there is to ensure alignment of the following: the outcomes, the assessment, and the instructions. Now, kailan dapat piniprepare yung TOS? Overall rule, dapat yung TOS i-prepare before a test is created. Okay? So when I say TOS, dapat before, halimbawa, the midterm exams, may TOS. Okay? Before the prelim exams, dapat may TOS. Yan yung general, general. Pero yung pinaka-ideal is you even prepare the TOS before the start of instruction. Okay? Halimbawa, before pa lang ako mag-start ng Unit 1, ideally, may table of specifications na ako para sa unit test. Bakit? Para I will be able to proportionately divide also the lessons that I will have, and to review whether these lessons that I am having is indeed proportionate to the time allotment that I have. Okay? You will understand more of that as we have the examples. So ano muna yung importance ng TOS? Una, to ensure instructional objectives. Okay? So nakikita mo yung mga IOs mo, yung instructional objectives mo. So dapat na-capture yan lahat sa assessment. Hindi kasi guys pwede, no? If you can notice, there are examinations sometimes wherein the objectives, for example, of the course are to identify the parts of the microscope, identify the types of the cell, identify the parts of the cell, describe or differentiate the plant cell versus the animal cell. Okay? Halimbawa, apat yung learning outcomes na gustong ma-attain. Ano kadalasan yung fallacy na nangyayari sa atin kapag nagre-create ng exam? Tayo kasi kapag nagre-create ng exam, di ba binubuksan mo yung textbook, halimbawa. So ang tendency mo, sa first 2 pages ng textbook, napakarami kang items na kinukuha. Pagkatapos, pagpunta mo na ng chapter 2, sige, konti na lang yung items sa chapter 2 kasi naubos na yata ni chapter 1. Okay? Have you noticed that there are examinations wherein most of the coverage are coming from the first part of the lessons. And that is actually a fallacy. Ha? Kino-consider po natin yung fallacy. Hindi po dapat ganon yung practice natin. So ano pong ginagawa ni TOS? If the TOS tells you chapter 1, 30% of the exam, dapat 30% ng exam ang galing kay chapter 1. Chapter 2, 30% of the exam, another 30% of the exam. Chapter 3, kasi medyo mahaba siya, 40% of the exam, 40% ng exam, dapat kay chapter 3 manggaling. It's not wise for you as an educator to just focus on the first topics. Halimbawa, sasabihin mo na, oy sige, doon tayo sa chapter 1 kasi yung students usually chapter 1 lang yung pinag-aaralan. Dapat you will be able to spread it proportionately across the topics. Take note of the term that I am using. I said proportionately. Hindi mo yan magagawa equally. Because not all of your chapters, hindi po lahat ng chapters natin equal po yung distribution nila. Kaya hindi po lahat ng chapters natin equal yung distribution. May mga chapters tayong mahahaba, may mga lessons tayong maiikli. That's why it should be proportionate. That's why it should be proportionate. Next, you need to ensure that the test developer will not overlook the details that are considered essential to a good test. Okay? Halimbawa yung sinasabi ko kanina that if the coverage would be 4 units or 4 objectives, dapat all of these 4 objectives should be considered as part of your examinations. Okay? So if you are teaching mathematics, halimbawa, if part of your lesson is factoring, hindi pa pwede na yung factoring lang ng binomial yung iti-test mo. Dapat all types of factoring i-include mo. Or else your students will not be studying well because they know that you will only include very few, no? Very few of the items. Then it also makes development of your items easier and more efficient because it acts as a guide. Then it also ensures that the test will sample important content area. Tapos it is useful in planning and organizing. Pagkatapos, it also offers an opportunity for teachers and students to clarify the achievement expectations. So, dyan sa TOS, makikita ng student na okay, dapat magtuon ako ng pansin dito. Dapat pagtuunan ko ng pansin to. Or okay, dapat kakaunti lang yung time na idudulot ko dito for study kasi nga kakaunti lang yung topics na lalabas dito for the examination. Okay? Yun yung mga dapat nating i-consider when you are making your TOS. Now, what are the different steps in making your TOS? Our reference text, that of Balagtas, tells us of 5 steps in developing your TOS. So one of those steps is to determine the objectives of the test. Paulit-ulit, no? Determine the objectives of the test. So it should be based on the instructional objectives. Tapos dapat nakaka-cover mo yung KSA na sinasabi natin. Class, pag sinabi kong KSA, so knowledge, attitude, and skills, no? Dapat class nakaka-cover yung knowledge, attitude, and skills. So in this case, the term being used is cognitive. Tapos for the attitude, you have your affective. Then for your skills, you have your psychomotor. Okay, so those are the 3 objectives that we need to cover. Now, please be reminded that when I say cognitive, okay, when I say cognitive class, the focus of that is knowledge. Okay, so focus is knowledge, understanding, pagkatapos yung awareness ng students natin on a certain topic. When we talk naman about affective, as the term implies, it will be attitude. It will be focused attitude, on attitude. So halimbawa, no, oftentimes you are asked the question, which of the following is the appropriate thing to do? Okay? Now you are triggering the student. You are guiding the student to change the attitude of the student to something that is desirable. Kung makikita ninyo, usually, kapag yung tanong class is nagsasabi, which of the following actions is appropriate? Out of the 4 actions, isa lang yung tama. Kasi usually, 4 yung choices, di ba? Kadalasan, yung 3 choices is a reminder to the student that you are not supposed to do this. You're supposed to do this one. Because you're trying to guide the students kung ano yung tamang behavior na dapat nilang i-manifest. Okay? Now, psychomotor. When I talk about psychomotor, it is designed to build physical or motor skills. So, ibig sabihin, class, no, when we say physical and motor skills, so, halimbawa, papakantahin natin sila, papasayawin natin sila. Okay? But, okay, when you talk about psychomotor skills, your psychomotor skills are not usually covered by your written examinations. Okay? Again, psychomotor skills are not usually covered by your written examinations. Pagkatapos, class, you need to choose objectives that can best be captured by a written test. Take note, yung focus natin ngayon is written test lang muna. So, psychomotor, hindi po siya. Now, if you would look at psychomotor, so class, di ba meron tayong 2 uri ng assessment by form of assessment. So, you have your paper and pencil assessment, and we can say that is your written assessment. And then another class is what we refer to as your performance-based assessment. Okay? Your performance-based assessment. Pag titingnan natin, class, yung tinatawag nating psychomotor, yung best way po to assess your psychomotor is your performance-based assessment. Okay? The best way po, class, to assess your psychomotor is your performance-based assessment. Class, in the case of your paper and pencil, no, class, sa case ng paper and pencil natin at saka written test natin, usually class cognitive skills yung tinetest natin dito. Okay? Usually class cognitive skills yung tinetest natin dito. Now, take note na naman, I'm using the word usually. Bakit usually, class? Because your cognitive skills can also be tested using your performance-based assessment. Okay? So, classic cognitive skills, pwedeng paper and pencil, pwede ding performance-based assessment. Pero pag sinabi natin, class, na psychomotor, ang best choice talaga, class, for your psychomotor is your performance-based assessment. Okay? Now, anong example ng cognitive skills na performance-based assessment? Isa po nating pwedeng mga example dyan is mastery. Okay? Let's say for example, mastery of a poem. Halimbawa, paparecite ko sila. Ano nga ba yung common poem natin ng mga elementary students? All things great and wonderful, something on that line. Okay? I am not so sure if you're still familiar with that poem. So, that would be performance-based assessment. So performance-based assessment kasi pinamemorize mo sa estudyante and then you will be asking them to present it in front. Okay? You're making them do a performance. Okay? Now, a hand was raised earlier. Was there a question? Sorry, was not able to acknowledge it earlier. Sige. If may katanungan, feel free to raise your hand again and then feel free to chat. I'm just finding for the right time for me to insert the questions and to entertain your questions. Then, the next thing is to determine the coverage of the test. Okay? Tulad ng sa inyo, nagtatanong, sir, ano yung coverage ng midterm? Anong coverage ng prelim? So class, in the same way, when you are dealing with your pupils, they need to be oriented of the coverage of the test. Kadalasan anong sinasabi ng ibang teacher, sasabihin you go back to your course syllabus, you go back to your course outline because it's already indicated there. Yes, it's correct. That is indicated in your course syllabus and your course outline. However, class, you need to be reminded that some of your timing may be flexible or some of your timing may be moved. That's why you need to update your students if what are the topics that are relevant to be included and then the topics discussed in class. When you are making your examinations later on, always remember that your exams, your assessment should only include topics that you discussed in class. Okay? Now, baka sabihin nyo naman, sir, ikaw nga, nag-i-exam, hindi mo naman to na-discuss. Plus, when I say discussed in class, it does not mean that I have read it in class. It does not actually mean that I have that I just stated it in class directly. But when we say discuss in class, at least you are informed that these are the topics that you need to focus on. Okay, these are the topics that you need to focus on. Now remember, especially by the time that you will be teaching, our inclination is already on independent learning and we are already inclined on self-directed learning. Okay, especially if you are already on secondary education. So class, your inclination is independent learning and self-directed learning. You do not spoon feed your students, but you just guide your students so that they will be able to learn what they need to learn. Halimbawa, sasabihan ko kayo, okay, you study the criteria for making a multiple choice items. I will be asking you next meeting. Pagka next meeting, dapat tatanungin ko kayo, paano nga ba gagawa ng multiple choice? Para ma-evaluate ko if nabasa ninyo. Pero halimbawa, if you're dealing with high school students, I can tell you, okay, for next meeting, you need to be able to differentiate a plant cell and an animal cell. Okay? So you can bring drawings. You can also bring notes that can differentiate plant cell and animal cell. Pagka next meeting, tatanungin ko sila that is considered to be topic discussed. And then the topics that are relevant. So again, hindi pwede na biology yung lesson natin, tapos feel ko lang, magtatanong ako about x squared minus y squared. Okay? Huwag yung kunan ng trabaho yung math teacher kapag biology yung focus mo. Okay? So doon ka mag-focus sa topic that are relevant to your subject matter. Or else you're going outside the parameters. So calculate the weight for each topic. And how do you calculate it? Based on relevance and the time spent and then the percentage. Now, let's have an example na. So class, paano po tayo magka-calculate? Halimbawa, you have 6 weeks of classes. Or in this case, okay, let's pick muna this example. Halimbawa, you have 7 topics and then you have 5 class sessions. If you would look at it here, topic 1 was discussed daw sa half meeting. Yung topic 2, 1.5 meeting. Yung topic 3, 1 meeting talaga. Now, thinking that one session is equal to 1 hour. Okay? So 1 session class is 1 hour. So makikita natin dito yung time equivalent. Okay? 0.5 is 30 minutes. Okay? 1 hour is 60 minutes. 1.5 hour is 90 minutes. Okay? I hope you're getting that, ha? So if you would look at it times 60 minutes lang yan para makuha natin yung 30 minutes, makuha natin yung 90 minutes, at makuha natin yung 60 minutes. Now, here's the more important thing that you need to be able to know how to compute. Yes, I will be asking you to compute in your respective examinations because you need to be able to know how to develop a TOS. So class, if you would look at this percent of time, so this refers to 10%. Paano po natin nakuha yung 10%? If you can pick up your phones with a calculator, it's simply 30 because 30 minutes yung na-spend dito divided by the total, which is 300 minutes times 100. Okay? So again, class, it's 30. Uulitin ko ha, for this one, it's 30 over total, which is 300 times 100. That is why you have your 10%. Okay? Now, para sa ano, bakit nagko-compute ka ng percent? That would mean that later on, 10% of your examinations would be coming from topic 1. Okay? Now, let's try computing for topic 2. 90 over 300 times 100. That would be equivalent to your 30%. Okay? So class, titingnan ninyo, tinotal na ang lahat. That would be total to 100% already. Okay? That is what we meant by the step that you need to calculate the weight of each topic. In other words, pag titingnan ko po yung topic 2, okay, tingnan ko yung topic 2. Mahaba yung topic 2 eh. Kaya napaka-lengthy ng topic 2. Because topic 2 is lengthy, a lot of time is being spent for topic 2. Okay? And 30% of the examinations will be coming from topic 2. That's why if you will be asked, kapag equal yung distribution, hindi po equal ang distribution natin. Hindi po natin pwedeng sabihin na, okay, 70 items yung exam ko, 10 items will come from topic 1, 10 items hanggang topic 6 and 7. Hindi pwedeng ganon. Okay? That's a wrong practice. Instead, what should be done is that kapag mahaba yung topic 2, dapat mas marami din yung coverage niya. That's what we meant by proportional distribution of your items. Okay? Proportional distribution of the items. Now, if you would go back to the next step, the next step class is determine the number of items for the whole test. Okay? Determine mo yung number of items for the whole test. Sa atin, kadalasan, kasi 90 minutes tayo, kung nanonotice nyo, in your major examinations, 90 minutes is about 100 items, which is just about the standard. Plus, the usual kasi na binibigay nating standard is 1 minute now. We usually, it's here on the slide, 30 to 60 seconds for each item format with choices. Okay? Sa bawat item class na may choices, nagbibigay po kami ng 30 seconds to 1 minute. That's why, in test-taking strategy naman, sa inyong mga student, kapag kumukuha kayo ng exam, nagsasabi din kami na if you spent more than a minute or if you spent more than 2 minutes, let's say, for example, for a certain item, it's better for you to consider skipping that item first and then going to the next because you're spending too much time na on one item. Okay? So, 30 to 60 seconds lang po yung budget sa isang item. Which means that kung kayo naman yung gumagawa ng exam, huwag nyo namang masyadong habaan yung situation. Huwag nyo masyadong habaan yung question because your students would only have 1 minute supposedly to answer that question. For that reason, class, in 1 hour, 50 to 60 item exam is good for 1 hour. Okay? Instead about if mabait na teacher ako, gusto kong gawing 2 hours yung exam. Now, class, take note. If we're talking about items with choices, your 1 hour is already enough for 60 items. Hindi mo sila kailangang bigyan ng 2 hours. Hindi mo sila kailangang bigyan ng 3 hours. Pero kapag difficult siya, let's say for example, you're conducting what we refer to as power test. Pag power test siya, you can extend time depending on the level that you would want them to be testing on. Okay? Now, in online teaching, bakit kami naglalagay ng time limit? Plus, the time limit would actually prohibit or would actually discourage the student to cheat. Okay, the time limit is actually intended to discourage the student to cheat. Halimbawa, bibigyan ko kayo ng exam online, 10 items, tapos walang time limit. Ano yung tendency, class? The tendency is that the students will be searching for other items. The student class will be surfing the web. The students class will be asking their classmates if what is the correct answer. So, one strategy in online discussion to limit class the incidence of cheating is to have the time limit. Okay, is to have your time limit. Then, next, determine the number of items per topic. So class, di ba kanina nag-compute tayo ng percentage? Okay? Once na-compute natin yung percentage, tapos na-determine natin na okay, magbibigay ako ng 50 items for today's video. So class, anong ginawa? 10% times 50. Okay, so class, when you say 10%, that is 0.10 times 50. That's why it's equal to 5. This one class is 0.3 times 50. That's why it's equal to 15. Pag sinabi ko naman 0.2% times 50, that will be equal to 10. Okay, so on and so forth. That's how you determine the number of items that will be given for a specific examination or for a specific topic that you will be covering. Okay? So, kadalasan class, no, dalawang bagay yung tinitingnan namin. Una class, sinasabi ko kanina, relevance. Pagkatapos class, the time allotment. Ang kadalasan kinukonsider ng instructors is the time allotment because it's more realistic. Okay? Kasi in a semester, halimbawa, you're allotted 54 hours in a semester. No? Plus, may mga untowards na event na hindi iniiwasan. Halimbawa, yung isang topic baka napaikli dahil nga sa mga untoward incidents. Or halimbawa, mas gustong mag-focus ng teacher on this topic. So it will be the time allotment that will be a more realistic estimate of the items that you will be including in your TOS. Okay? Now, napakarami tayong TOS format, no? Nandyan si one-way, nandyan si two-way, at nandyan si three-way. So class, pag sinabi nating one-way TOS, tingnan nyo lang po yung content. Okay? Yan po si one-way. Ito po si two-way. Tsaka ito po si three-way. Okay? So with that, siguro nakikita nyo naman that one way is the simplest. Diba? One way yung pinaka-simplest, no? Pinaka-na-simplest pa. So it's easy to develop. However, it does not include the different levels of cognitive behaviors which you can find here in your two-way TOS. Okay? Pag titingnan nyo class si two-way TOS nyo, nandiyan na class yung different levels of cognitive behavior. Okay, mag-isip-isip na ano yung R, ano yung Q. Okay, so class yan yung remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, okay, tapos you're evaluating and creating. Okay, so kung nakikita kay two-way TOS, merong ganyan. Kay one-way TOS class, wala. Pero pag tatanong yan, what is the advantage of one-way TOS? It's easy to develop. Pagkatapos pangalawa class, however, hindi niya na-i-include yung cognitive behaviors. Now, pag titingnan natin si two-way TOS, nakikita natin kay two-way TOS na may targeted behavior na siya. May level of cognitive behavior na siya. Okay? Pagkatapos, mas complex yung format niya compared mo dun kay one-way. So, class, anong ibig sabihin nito, class? Nakikita ko dito that, okay? Punta muna tayo kay knowledge dimension. Class, ano nga ba yung F sa knowledge dimension? Sige nga, if you can still recall, what is the F in the knowledge dimension? 4 na levels yan. You have your F, C, P, and M. Sige nga, what is F?
Factual, sir.
Okay, very good, no? So you have your factual. Okay, so you have your factual. And then you have your conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive. Now, class, pag titingnan natin, this means that out of the 10 items na, or out of the 5 items, out of the 5 items na anong tawag natin dito, na kukunin ko from topic 1, 3 items class are remembering and 2 items are understanding. 3 items class is factual, 2 of the items is conceptual. Okay? Sir, bakit walang P and M? Expected yan class sa first topics. Di ba sa first topic, if you can notice in your lessons, kahit sa anong mang subject nyo, usually yung unit 1 or first lesson is all about concepts. It's all about remembering. It's all about some things that you need to memorize. And then sa later lessons pa natin nakikita, in the later lessons pa natin nakikita yung mga things wherein we can apply, things class wherein we can process, and then we can think. Okay? So that's why factual at saka conceptual pa lang siya. Okay? Plus yung I at saka yung dalawang I, itong dalawang I at saka itong I, legend lang yan class na ginamit ng reference text natin. Yung I niya class, if I'm not mistaken, is multiple choice. Yung dalawa niyang I is matching type. Okay? So it's just legend na. So I.3 or 1.3 means that multiple choice items, 3 items. Tapos class nakikita nyo yung number of placement. So nakikita kung saang items siya. Number 1 to 3, number 4 to 5. Para if your instructor class now, if your instructor or teacher will be asking you, or if your dean or principal will be asking you, okay, saan na dito yung remembering questions mo? You'll be able to show, ma'am, nandito po. Number items 1 to 3 are remembering. Items 4 to 5 are understanding. Items 12 to 13 are actually procedural and then application. Whereas items 14 to 15 are procedural and then analyzing. Okay? So yan po yung tinatawag nating two-way TOS. Now, other than that, you also have what you refer to as your three-way TOS. Okay? Ano naman yung kay three-way, ano? Okay? I'm so sorry, no? I think we need to delete this part here. Okay? Okay, delete po nating part na yan. Kasi in a three-way TOS, the knowledge dimension is included na along with the level of cognitive behavior. Okay? Kindly correct the example that I have also in your study guide. So plus, the knowledge dimension is included along with the level of cognitive behavior, the item format, and then the number of placement of the items. Ano pang pinagkaiba dito, class, ano? Pag titingnan nyo sa two-way TOS, hindi na po nailagay yung learning objective. Pero sa three-way TOS, nandyan lahat. Kaya nga sabi, ang three-way TOS daw is a combination of your one-way and two-way TOS. Okay? Pagkatapos tas nagpapakita siya ng variability, it shows the variability of the thinking skills targeted. Okay? Variability of thinking skills that are being targeted. Okay? Now, wag kayong masyadong ma-confuse at saka ma-overwhelm na, ay sir, bakit napakaraming naisulat dyan? Guys, pag titingnan nyo po, the same lang yan kay two-way TOS. This means that in topic 1, this is the learning objective, this is the time spent, this is the number of items, and now, for the 5 items class, 3 items will be multiple choice. From the 3 multiple choice items, factual po yun. From the 2 multiple choice items, conceptual po yun. Tapos dito class procedural at saka dito naman yung M natin which is metacognition. Okay? Now, so I would expect you that you will be able to make a TOS also of your own based on this format. Okay? Which will be one of your requirements also that you will be submitting for our class. Sige. Do you have any questions so far?